The big tech stocks are on a run this week, with Nvidia hitting a new high and, by the way, reclaiming its crown as the largest market cap company out there. Joining us right now with her Squawk Picks is Sarah Kunst. She is Cleo Capital Managing Director. And Sarah, let's talk through some of these names, especially with Nvidia back as the largest company in the world again. What do you think about Nvidia? Is this a buy at this point, or what's your guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best price name on the street, but the reality is that with this sort of shift, the concern here has been what's going to happen to NVIDIA's ability to sell chips to China. And the reality is that with the shift that we're seeing in Trump's tone on China buying Iranian oil, it certainly seems reasonable to say that Jensen's going to be able to get something done here. He's just somebody who I never want to count out when it comes to navigating global uncertainty, because he has spent his entire career dancing between the U.S. and China, and I think he's going to figure it out. So this is a name I like, and I've continued to like.
Figure it out in terms of being able to find a deal where he can sell chips to China?
I think so, yeah. I think, it might be the sort of slightly older chips. It might not be the cutting edge ones. There might be some limit in quantity, but a lot of that concern that we've seen over the last, since Trump has taken office about NVIDIA's ability to sell into China, I think it's been overblown.
And do you think DeepSeek was overblown too? Because that's what caused the problems with the stock back in January.
The thing you have to remember is that DeepSeek was using older NVIDIA chips, right? So DeepSeek is a threat to things like Google's Gemini or ChatGPT. It's not so much a threat to NVIDIA's core business, because if people need chips, then NVIDIA is going to be selling them those chips for the foreseeable future. China has Huawei, and they are a great company in many ways, but they're just not caught up on the chip front, and it'll probably be another few years before they can really compete there.
One name you think is underappreciated is Alphabet. Why?
I think this is the funniest thing on the street right now, because you see this sort of insane appetite around things like social media with TikTok and Tesla with self-driving cars and robotics, with AI, with NVIDIA. Alphabet gives you exposure to all of that, plus a really strong core business, and people just don't value it properly. I think that there's a big disconnect here about understanding how good Apple is at this stuff, how sort of far ahead they are with Waymo, how well Gemini is doing compared to ChatGPT. And I think that that's something that this is probably a really great time to buy, because eventually the market will realize that Apple's doing way more than they realize.
Well, the question is search with Google. Is that going to be taken away by people searching on all of these AI chatbots instead? Gemini they have, but you've got Perplexity, you've got OpenAI, you've got all these other places that people now are sometimes going first. And how big of the revenue and the profit is from Alphabet comes from Google search?
Yeah, so I mean, the question there is not so much search, it's revenue, right? And so as people are shifting their time usage to other products like the Geminis of the world, I think that Google will figure out how to monetize that you will see sort of the search spend shift to Gemini. I think that Gemini has they're sort of slow and steady now, but I think that they're going to do really well at scale, because it is baked into Chrome and into all of these other Google products that are mostly free for people. Gmail, all of that. Gmail started to move to more sponsored ad links. You obviously have YouTube as an ad.
But you don't think that there's going to be eating into their monopoly-like power in terms of that search? You think that they're going to be able to maintain that same amount of the search traffic, whether it goes through, Gemini or somewhere else? You don't think there's more competition than there ever has been for that search?
We haven't seen, the search business has ebbed and flowed, right? Remember Bing? Remember when there used to be a lot more search engines early on? And what we see over time is that people tend to be pretty lazy. The space where that could become probably a bigger risk to them is if they're no longer the default search option in people's text bar browsers.
Yeah, on Apple, too. If you're not the default search browser on the phone, you can't pay for that anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Meta very quickly? You are bullish on Meta, too.
I do. I like Meta because I think it does not matter, day in and day out how you feel about the products. You're still using them. It's really hard to replace WhatsApp. A little bit easier to replace Instagram with TikTok, but TikTok has had problems of its own. And then I think when it comes to Facebook, there's not really a great way to keep up with your second cousins otherwise. And so I think that that's just a very sticky company, and then we see that usage has remained pretty good, even as these other sort of social networks come and go.